Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're making Tebirkes, which is a Danish poppy seed pastry. It's one that we distinctly remember eating when our parents would go to the bakery in Denmark and get us breakfast. The pastry consists of basically 2 layers of Danish pastry dough, or wienerwurst, and then it's filled with marzipan, butter, and sugar, and then topped with a thick layer of poppy seeds. Besides the pastry dough being, one of the most difficult things to make, this is a pretty simple pastry. The combination of the marzipan and the poppy seeds is just so good and very nostalgic for us. If you want to learn how to make Tebirkes, or these Danish poppy seed pastries, stick around and keep watching. Just like the spandauer, the filling for Tebirkes is marzipan based. I have 100 grams of marzipan. This is homemade, but you can also use store-bought marzipan. And it's been sitting out at room temperature just so it's softer. Next is going in 50 grams of granulated sugar and 50 grams of softened unsalted butter. And we're mixing it together until it becomes a smooth paste. Now that this is a smooth paste, we're gonna set it aside and work on our dough. This is our laminated Danish pastry dough, or wienerwurst. We have a full video on how to make this, and I'll link it somewhere on the screen so you can watch that. This video is basically picking up after all the laminations are done and we're ready to roll out this dough and shape our pastries. I'm gonna flour my surface really well and keep this on hand. And now we start rolling. I'm rolling very gently and not putting very much pressure on this at all. Now that this is 16 inches long, I'm actually gonna cut it in half and just work with half of the dough at a time. This half of the dough is wrapped up and it's gonna go back in the fridge until I'm done with the other half. Now we continue. Now this is rolled out, it's probably around 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit thicker, but we are rolling this out quite thin. And now I'm just gonna trim up the sides so it's a nice rectangle. Now that this is trimmed up, it's measuring around 14 inches long by 9.5 inches wide. Basically, as long as it's at least 12 inches long and around 9 inches wide, that's what we're shooting for here. We're now gonna add our marzipan filling that we made earlier. We're gonna spread the filling down the middle third of this dough. This is only half the dough, so we're only gonna use half of the filling for this. We're gonna fold over this third of the dough about halfway across the filling, and I'm pressing it down to make sure it's sticking to the filling. Before I fold over the other third, I'm just gonna run a tiny bit of water along the edge of this so I can really get the dough to stick together. Now we're gonna fold over the other third, just making sure that it overlaps 1/2 inch to 1 inch so that it sticks to this side. And now I'm gonna press the middle down firmly because you don't want this to come undone. I'm gonna cut this strip into 6 pastries, and you can either measure and divide by 6 and cut it that way, but I like to just mark halfway and then divide the rest into thirds. No measuring required. That was kind of uneven. This is why we mark it. And then same with the bottom half. And now that it's marked, we're gonna cut them. And these are our shaped pastries. Let's transfer them to a baking sheet. I have a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, and now I'm just moving them over. Oh, make sure you're putting them seam side down. So flipping them all over. I'm gonna cover these. I'm gonna set these aside while we work on the second half of the dough. I have both of the baking trays with the pastries ready to go. They're covered, and now it is time for them to rise. Like I've said in the other videos making this dough, it'll probably take at least 2 hours, if not longer, for them to rise. I'll show you a bit of a close-up of what they look like now. And when they're done rising, I'll show you what we're looking for in a correctly proofed Danish pastry. This is what they're looking like before. And I'll be back in 2 hours. With about 20 minutes left of rising time, we're going to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. The topping for Tebirkes is super simple. We're gonna egg wash the pastries. An egg wash is just 1 egg with a little bit of water whisked together in a bowl. And we're gonna brush that egg wash on, and then coat the top with a generous layer of poppy seeds. Our first batch of pastries that we prepared are at the end of their proofing time, so let's go over what we're looking for. Oh, and it's probably been around 2.5 hours at this point. You should see the pastries getting much taller after their proofing time, at least twice as tall. The other thing we always look for with Danish pastry dough is when you touch the pastries, they should be very light and airy, and if you tap them, they should almost have a bit of a wobble to them. Now we're ready to add the egg wash and the poppy seeds to the top. First batches go in the oven for around 15 to 20 minutes. As you may have noticed, the second batch is not baking right now. One, the second batch is slightly behind because we shaped them later in terms of proofing time. And two, the oven can vary so much in temperature if you have 2 baking sheets in there that I just like to eliminate the problem and bake them one at a time anyway. So while the first batch is in the oven, we're gonna prepare these with the egg wash and the poppy seeds as well. Our first batch is done, so now we're gonna swap and bake the second batch. And again, these are gonna go in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. All right, we're gonna take a quick look at these. You might notice some of the marzipan has leaked out. It's kind of inevitable with the way that these are shaped, but once we take them off the pan and cool them on the rack, you won't really see any of the messiness around the outside. But what you should be seeing is a nice golden brown color. They're also gonna be golden brown on the bottom. And the goal is for none of these to like flop over, and that's really the reason why we made them so thin when we rolled out the dough. Let's transfer these to the cooling rack. Our second batch is baked, so let's transfer these to the cooling rack as well. Now we're gonna let these cool down for at least 15 minutes before we try them. Time to try it. It's really good. Tastes just like how I remember it. Very flaky, slightly sweet, and the poppy seeds are a great texture. Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you try to make Tebirkes. As we've said many times, this is one of our favorites. Let us know in the comments if you do, and we'll see you for the next video. Bye. Are very similar. Is grammar. Get your grammar right. The culprit. Bowie. That's really loud.